both surprised by the way we looked. The years had changed us too.
Hello again. Welcome to another episode of Gung. It's, what is it?
19.
November 19, 2025. We're going to bring up the date. You're going to know a lot of things we talk about, but basically, it looks like Trump finally punched himself out. He's on a downward spiral. A lot of things are happening. Finally, Americans, and that's what we're about. We're Americans, and there's a really good series on right now called The Revolution. And it was then, at that time, that we say, you know, they said, we're Americans. We're not Englishmen, we're Americans. And Ken Burns is saying that revolution is relevant, is so important to what is happening right now. We're at the point where we have to take down a tyrant. He's a tyrant. And he's done so many bad things to us. And it's obvious that he has no loyalty, no honesty, no character. And he hangs around with billionaires that are the same way. And what he did with that Saudi prince yesterday was disgusting. Hanging out with that, it's all about money.
Well, it's all about he's getting $1 trillion from the Saudi prince. This is a guy who killed a journalist friend of mine, Jamal Khashoggi. He butchered him and had him butchered in Turkey. Trump is disgracing the office by inviting this murderer to the White House. But he's had a bunch of murderers to the White House. He had Modi, who's a tyrant in India, was implicated in a massive human rights violations in 2002. He's had Erdogan from Turkey, who's also no friend of journalists. He's had Bibi Netanyahu, who presided over this massive bombing campaign of Palestinians that killed 67,000 people. So, Trump is swimming with the devils here, and everything. The American people are beginning to get tired of this continuing diet of absurd assertions of power. They don't like his asserting monarch power. They don't like his involvement with Epstein, which is a problem that just will not go away. And we'll have more exposés. We can talk about that. They don't like the economy. The tariffs have been a disaster. It's cost the average American household $1,300 in increased prices. Inflation is rising, and employment is slowing. He held up the Bureau of Labor Statistics because there was a shutdown of the federal government. But this Friday, we'll see the impact on employment. They've lost 1 million jobs since Trump took office. So overall, I think the American people are voting with their feet and their conscience, and they're seeing that this is not the country that America was. We're not living up to our values. We're threatening people in South America over, fishermen. We're killing fishermen who have no provable involvement in drug trafficking, but, we've never done that before. And we're, looking at Putin as a kind of a wink and nod strategy. Trump claimed that he was going to cut off the Russian oil exports, which are financing the Ukraine war. He hasn't done that. He gave Russia till the end of the month. He still has a 0% tariff on Indian refined oil, and India's buying about half of the Russian oil and then re-exporting it. So you have all these tankers going all the way from the Baltic through the Suez Canal, all the way around to India, and then dumping their oil in the Indian companies that belong to the richest guy in India. And then he's selling the refined petroleum. And who's buying it? Europe is buying a lot of it, the United States, South Africa, Australia. This is how Putin is paying for his war, and basically we're financing it. Trump could stop that today. He could cut that war off like he promised to do 53 times before he was elected. He would stop the war day one. It's 11 months into his term, and he hasn't done anything.
Well, everybody, I think, agrees with us. I think that Russia is basically a mafia state. And that's what Trump's trying to do here. He wants to be a mafia boss. That's what he's doing. What he's doing to our government, to our democracy, is like when the mob moves in on a legitimate business. They worm in, they get in, they take over. Like if you go to the mob for a favor, and you're a businessman,
Yeah.
you got a partner. Partner's gonna come in, he's gonna take over the business. He's gonna sell off all your goods, order more, and sell them out the back door. He's gonna take all credit he can. Take over and not gonna pay it back, and you're gonna be in debt. And then he's gonna burn the business down. It's called banging it out. And that's what he's doing.
Well,
He's banging-
exactly, and the clearest example of that is right now, the stock market is sitting on the edge of a cliff because AI companies, including the top 7 or 8 of them, are valued astronomically in terms of price earnings. Tesla is valued at 174 times forward earnings. They have barely breathing economically. But on top of that, we have crypto. Trump has opened the door to has just taken off all the gloves with respect to crypto. There's a company in El Salvador. It has its home base in the British Virgin Islands, but it's operating out of El Salvador, called Tether. And they have acquired $135 billion of U.S. Treasury bonds, and they've issued a stable coin, USDT. And that thing is valued now, the company is 184 billion. It's the 19th largest holder of US Treasury bonds. And it's based on a Ponzi scheme. So, notice what happens if Americans shift their bank deposits into crypto. It drains money out of the banking system, and banks are gonna have to compete with these guys. And there's no restraint there's no regulation whatsoever. We don't know. The only way we know is what Tether tells us they bought. Who's advising Tether? The Secretary of Commerce, Howard Lutnick, Cantor Fitzgerald. I mean, tell me about insider operations. The whole Trump family is involved in crypto, and they've been soliciting investments from the Middle East, from the Saudis and the UAE. At the same time, they're making foreign policy decisions regarding these countries. So it's a huge conflict of interest. It's never happened on this scale before in the history of the United States. And I think the American people across the political spectrum just don't understand why we have this monarch, trying to claim all these powers. I think his days are numbered. I was worried 6 months ago that he was going to send in, troops and we were all going to face a dictatorship. I think right now we're facing a Watergate situation. We're going to have both parties uniting to get rid of this guy.
Well, the Epstein thing is a really big scandal. Maybe not as big as Watergate, but it's a terrible scandal. And it involves a lot of rich white men taking advantage of down and out poor girls. That maybe 1,000, as many as 1,000. I've gone online and I looked through the Epstein indictment and the Ghislaine indictment, and he's charged with conspiracy, but there's no other defendant in the case but him. This doesn't make sense. Yeah, statutory allegation. This is another thing. They're saying from 202 to about 205 in the Southern District, Jeffrey Epstein, the defendant, and others known and unknown, willfully and knowingly did conspire, but others known and unknown. There's no other
not
co-conspirators.
Well, we've just had this huge revelation about J.P. Morgan. They had 4,725 suspicious activity reports that they turned in as much as 18 years late. And it relates to this case because this was all public. J.P. Morgan knew about all this. They were administering Epstein's accounts, And they were required to turn in SARS reports within 30 days to the US Treasury. They held on to him for up to 17 years because Epstein was threatening to disclose the number of important people that he introduced to JP Morgan. This is a
But
clear.
this thing here, this
Yeah.
indictment, I've never seen anything like this.
Yeah.
This incredible conspiracy, and you only indict one person.
And they don't mention anybody else involved.
Nobody else.
Yeah.
Not even Ghislaine, she's indicted separately, and it's only her.
So we need a special investigator to go after this. We need
There's
exactly what we
something-
had with Watergate. We need,
But you know
an
something?
independent
But
investigator.
Comey's daughter was the lead prosecutor on
Of
this
course,
case.
that's why they fired her. That's why,
But it
you know,
doesn't make-
they tried to prosecute James Comey. The judge just practically threw that case out this week.
Threw
because
the
it was-
case out?
The prosecutor who was going after Comey made all kinds of errors. And the judge says Comey prosecutor may have made critical errors. It was a case of complete amateurism in the prosecution. The Justice Department, anybody who's any good, is leaving because they look around and this is a complete clown car. So I think there are still a few Republicans who think for themselves and will understand that this is going to be the end of their party if they keep on playing this guy out. Trump has these interests and they have these interests, and they're not, they're dividing.
But they've been so scared up to this point because they thought that Trump would primary them out of their own.
Well, I think Trump was counting on the ignorance of the American people. A lot of his supporters, couldn't find Palestine on a map. They're not well informed about international stuff. They don't know about the Ukraine. They don't know Putin. They don't really care about corruption necessarily. But they're seeing a president whose economic promises are all turning out to be mainly being kept for billionaires. The billionaires got this huge tax cut this summer, $4 trillion in their pockets directly. And what has Trump done since then? He's cut food stamps. He's trying to find the money in the U.S. government budget. It doesn't exist.
He's dissolving the Department of Education.
He's dissolving all these.
He's done what the mob does to lawyers,
Yeah,
to universities, to the media. I
to
mean,
the law firms of the world, he's got them running on the run. He had big universities intimidated and scared. And he got all the
pay me and I'll protect
pay
you.
protection money. And
This is
that's what he's extracting. But I think it's taken a while for this to sink into the American people that we can do better than this. We deserve better than this. He's picked fights with our closest neighbors. Canada. I mean, people love Canadians. I mean, they love us. We have any fights with Canada? That's ridiculous. He's threatened to invade Venezuela, a country that doesn't really sell any fentanyl and is a minor player in the cocaine industry.
They have a lot of oil.
They have a lot of oil, and that's what Trump would see as the reason to go after him. But he doesn't have the right to do that. They had a complicated memorandum of law that he had his attorneys try to justify the use of armed force against these fishermen. And they said, basically, we can do this because it's a strike from the air. And so there's no ground troops involved. And therefore, that opens one door. And the second door is that we don't really need, it's an act of terrorism because it's narco-terrorism. It's trying to stretch our authority to go after imminent threats. We aren't at war with Venezuela. We haven't had a congressional declaration of war against Venezuela. There's no authorization in Congress for any of this activity. He's doing it for one reason. It's a great distraction. It's a great distraction from his continuing bad news from the Epstein investigation.
And he's trying to do something
economy.
with the Israelis and the Palestinians. He's trying to do something in Ukraine with the Ukrainians and the Russians. But I think that is going to come down to Ukrainians giving up what they've lost on the ground. And I don't know if that could happen.
Well, I don't think the Ukrainians are not going to go through that. You know, Putin is struggling with his economy. You know, Russia has lost 220,000 dead in the Ukraine in 4 years. And they've been at war in the Ukraine since February 2022. That's 47 months. That's as long as World War II was for the United States. In World War II, we lost 291,000 Americans died in World War II. Putin has already, his war in the Ukraine has already cost him 220,000 dead and 800,000 wounded. So this is more than 1 million Russians who've been killed or wounded in the Ukraine. And this is a war that was going to take 3 days. The Russian economy is in deep trouble. If he has any trouble selling his oil abroad, you know, the whole exercise will crater. They have high inflation, they have high interest rates, lots of people leaving the country. There's not a lot of reporting from the Times. I'm sort of disappointed about just how weak Putin's position is.
But you know, this thing with Epstein really backfired on him. Because I think when he was campaigning, he said they were gonna disclose the files, right?
Oh, yeah,
And
promised day one.
The maggots were accusing the Democrats of running a pedophile ring. They've been doing this for years at a pizza parlors, right?
Right.
And it turns around, no, it's not the Democrats, it's these rich white men that are friendly with Trump and Epstein, they're doing it. And so the whole thing is flipped for him.
Well, it's also, you know, we
And-
haven't gotten to the bottom of the Epstein thing. I mean, Epstein was involved in this pedophile network, but it was also, it's just too much money flowing around for these various people for it just to be about pedophilia. I think there's an espionage effort here, and that Epstein was working for foreign intelligence agencies. We can you can pretty much guess who they were. You know, they have a real interest in figuring out what's going on with AI in Silicon Valley. You know, so we've identified people that are put into these companies in Silicon Valley by Epstein and his cronies to extract information about AI technology. And, you know, who wants to know that? Putin doesn't have AI technology. He'd love to have it. It's sort of like the equivalent of the Manhattan Project. Why did the Russians put spies here? Because they wanted to steal the atom bomb. So this is partly a tale of pedophilia and this reprehensible behavior and extorting people from, you know, by exposing them to that kind of behavior. But it's also about going after secrets in the United States. So we really have a thorough investigation about this.
But so this whole thing is a real danger, this whole thing to our security.
It is a national security
I
threat.
mean-
It is an absolute national security threat. It's not just about sexual misconduct. It's really a question of national security. And Trump knew this guy. He'd been involved with him for decades. You know, he knew Ghislaine Maxwell. He's practically pardoned her. She's got her sitting in a kind of a very comfortable institution in Texas. And the word is she's trying to get a pardon from him, absolutely. He's been pardoning some horrible people in the last 6 months, you know, real crooks. You know, I guess he expects them to take care of him when he's retired. But, you know, I think the more we find out about this guy, as Epstein himself said, Trump, he knows a lot of people who are bad, but he said Trump is pure evil.
Well, he's
That's
demonstrated-
Epstein.
yeah,
So-
He's demonstrated that over and over again. And what happens usually is a person like that, a human, he's not human, whatever he is, they bring themselves down. That's the Greek tragedy. You bring yourself down.
Yeah, it's hubris. I mean, it's someone who thinks they walk on water.
The thing with
Perfect.
Epstein, the women, the girls, they treated those girls like they were nothing. They were like a piece of meat that you could buy in a deli.
Well,
This is so bad.
this is actually, this has a history, this behavior. If you look at the history of the Freikorps in World War I, this was the extreme right military group that seized power, tried to seize power, and a lot of them became brown shirts later on. There's a couple really interesting books that analyzed the Freikorps members' diaries. And the one theme that kept coming through was they hated women. They hated the idea that women were free or independent. And they had all these terribly violent attitudes toward women. And there's a history in the whole Trump milieu of having this terrible attitude toward women.
Well, if you treat young girls like they're nothing, you know, you do anything you want to them, that's horrible. And
Yeah.
then they grow up. I mean, this is a turn the women of America have any sense against him. This is so bad.
I don't understand how women can support Trump at all, but I think that what we have to begin to understand is that this kind of authoritarian personality, this is not just an economic philosophy. It's not just about the middle class being left behind. This is a condition that he has and his followers have. A lot of his followers are basically, they have deep problems. And a lot of them are white males. I think it's a white male issue as well. Attitudes toward women is a good place to start in terms of the condition, understanding the condition that this guy has.
I mean, this is incredible that he was able to pardon all of the maggots that laid siege to the Capitol. He was able to pardon them, and nobody said, wait a minute. Pardon power was not meant for that. That's unconstitutional. That's unlawful. They're your co-conspirators. How could you pardon them? And then these other criminals that he's doing. This is absolutely crazy. This is a dictator. We're way out there. And it's going to bring him down.
And he's aligned with other dictators throughout the world. I mean, I think that he has cultivated dictators. You know, he gets along well with the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia. He gets along well with Modi in India. He gets along well with Putin. He got along well with Bolsonaro until they tossed him out. He got along well with Bibi Netanyahu, who is still clinging to power. These are not liberal Democrats. They are authoritarian personalities.
And
they're warmongers. A lot of them.
Let's not forget
the whole thing about violence against
let's not
ordinary
forget,
people.
Jim, that this guy is a loser. The only reason he was able to survive was on Soviet and Russian money. We know that.
Yeah.
The American people haven't got a clue. They don't know that at all. And Comey knows it. And
Well, you look at the basic questions about Donald Trump are very simple. You know, first of all, he had 6 bankruptcies in the 1990s. How in the world did he become a billionaire again after 2000? And it's a pretty simple story. If you look, you'll find out. There are people like Felix Sater who sat there and helped him get billions of dollars invested from Russia and from former Soviet Union states like Kazakhstan. You had Dmitry Rybolovlov, who was another Russian investor, and who bought. Trump was about to go bankrupt for a 7th time in June of 2008 in Florida, and he owed Deutsche Bank $40 million. Didn't have it personally. Rybolovlov comes out of Russia and he buys Trump's house for $40 million more than it's worth. Saves his.
at the same time, the Russian mafia were like buying condos in the Trump Tower or whatever.
Yeah.
It became like almost their headquarters there for the Russian mafia.
They got Israeli passports with the help of Robert Maxwell. I mean, there's a lot more to say about all that, but basically, Trump would not be in office today but for the money that he got from offshore sources.
Can you imagine somebody saying that to him at a news conference? We know that you're a loser.
We don't have, unfortunately, we don't have journalists who have really studied the history. There's a lot of this is written and down, but Craig Unger, my friend Craig, has spent years investigating Trump and his connections to first of all, to the Soviet Union. The whole, one of his first hotels in New York, they had KGB provided television sets for this this
Well, he was
building.
recruited, we know now,
He was recruited very early. But
1987.
It's not fair to say that he's an agent. I think it, he's a warlord and he's an asset. Putin uses him. And, they have their differences, but basically he isn't, he could stop that war today if he cut off the oil, if he put pressure on Modi. But Modi is in bed with,
He sees them as other mob bosses, and he's not gonna do that.
that's right.
They're the spies' families.
Guess who else
Yeah.
is buying Russian oil? Israel, through the tanker fleet, even though it's sanctioned. There's all this crude oil that's going, it's not a lot of oil, but it is substantial from the standpoint of Israel. And it's sanctioned. It shouldn't be done, but it's happening through this shadow fleet. So, I mean, Trump is basically most comfortable with dictators. I mean, he got along pretty well with Xi when he went to China and he met, in Korea, they met. He basically rolled over. No tariffs for a year. We get to buy the rare earths. This was, 3 weeks ago.
All right.
But he was very comfortable dealing with the fellow dictator.
In the Declaration of Independence, down in the paragraph there, it says basically that we, the people, have the right to take down a tyrant. I mean, they're talking about a future tyrant, not King George III.
Right.
Someone else comes along and he's a tyrant. We, the people, have the right to take the tyrant down and form a new government. It's right there. And
Well,
we're at that point where
I
people
think-
are thinking that way.
I think we're in the process of, it needs to be peaceful. It needs to be a mass movement. It needs to be, his poll ratings are now below 40%. It's the lowest any president has ever had at this point in time, and it's been dropping like a stone. So what we need to do is to just get the people who are doing the No Kings
We're
movement.
almost done.
To-
Yes, we
we
need
need them-
millions
we
upon
need
millions
millions of
of
people.
bodies to get out
That's
there
right.
and march and speak and demonstrate.
Yeah,
That's what we have to do.
and make it clear
And we're
to,
done.
make it to clear.